You used a couple of key words there I'd love to pick up on: dynamic, diverse, engaging. That is is making sure that whether they are recreational level, national level, or world's best, that they are in it, that they want to be there, and that there's intention, there's focus, there's
Mm.
curiosity. Some of these concepts, I'm just thinking about the ways in which you've described that. Um, to culture some of those sensations, I'm just curious to get your thoughts. What's the difference or the role that sports science has played, where it's about knowns, about control, about training zones, about structure, about objectives, and how we balance the two?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question because I wouldn't say I come up against sports scientists. I don't mean that at all. But I think there can be a tendency to go through things that are measurable because it gives us an answer. 10 of these, 15 of these, an hour of this will equal this. Now, I don't think any one element of coaching should dominate that space. Sports science shouldn't lead, psychology shouldn't lead, nutrition shouldn't lead. It's a community of structures that surround the learner, and in there is coaching, the emotional connection, the emotional regulation of somebody, the understanding where they're at in their journey, why they come, what's the reason they're there with you. I mean, yes, sports science can make us be more efficient of how we train. We don't need as many hours. And from my background, Chris Bourne was the first one who sort of, less hours, was more quality than quantity, which was a kind of misnomer of quantity meant performance. But he changed that sports science lens around cycling at the time. So I think that we will take a piece of everything and knit that into what that sport needs, that athlete needs. So, my early experience, I suppose, which I mentioned in our conversation around RPE, was again having understanding of sports science, but taking it back to a community coach who might have 30 players pre-season and doesn't have 30 heart rate monitors, can't manage the exertion in that session. So I just developed an idea, and I've used this a couple of times before by going to one of two supermarkets. I won't mention which ones they are, where you buy your goods, you get a token, you can put it into the three charities as you leave. And one is a community charity, one for animals, the one's for disabilities. There's a variety of those things. I feel such guilt. I go back into shop 3 times, get 3 tokens, put it all in the charity boxes. I can't decide which one. So then I had some feedback at the end of the season that my pre-season fitness for the rugby club wasn't tough enough, didn't stretch them. Yes, it was creative and challenging, but it didn't really drive people hard. So I didn't want to wait to the end of the season, so I then went and bought a load of tiddlywinks off the internet and some plastic tubs. I numbered them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. After each session, the player would put a tiddlywink into the tub that most reflected the level of intensity of their training, their RPE, rate perceived exertion, and I just mapped it. So I kind of embraced a bit of creative thinking. I embraced a very basic level of sports science, but it sat with my coaching approach as well. So everything has a place, but I do believe that the volume shouldn't be turned up on one of those louder than the others.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we talked about the pressures of modern coaching, which might mean that a coach or indirectly the science team or the support team start to look for knowns and look for certainty and start to go for things that they have a greater sense work, or that they're familiar with, or that they've associated with success because they did it before they were successful, and that starts to become like a bigger anchor in the training program. We're going to do that session again. That session works. I'm just curious how you can balance the spontaneity and freedom of breaking rules with the structure and objectives required in coaching or learning scenarios.
Well, the direction of travel is the same. We our end goal, where we're going during a season, maybe during a cycle. It is essentially the same direction. But to remember that in that approach, that we will naturally want to freshen things up. As a coach, I want to be freshened up. I want to challenge myself. I want to go to a session thinking, this is new, I want to try this. And athletes are no different. This a very staid, structured approach doesn't mean we go away from things like periodization, where certain things happen at certain times, absolutely. But it's also thinking that we want to freshen things up, we want to change things, we want to challenge people. How exciting is ever been to a presentation, you walked into it, and it's so different to what you expected? It's really made you think, wow, this is great. I hadn't thought of this. So I get energized by trying new things. If I want the people I'm coaching to get better, they got to expect me to get better. That absolutely, it cannot be a one-way thing. My ceiling can't be their ceiling. I've got to keep on pushing the boundaries of ideas, engagement, of challenge, but also with purpose. So it's not random. Creative thinking is not doing something for the sake of it. It's doing something with a purpose. So I'm going to do this because I think it will. And when someone's looking at why you're getting a pop-up tent, or why you're thinking of a different idea around how you teach fundamental movement skills, the vehicle to get the learning has got to have purpose. It's got to be related to what we're doing. So, it doesn't. I want to say that we don't all have to invent round the corner vacuum cleaners. Mind breaking, really super ideas. It can sometimes be the simplest of things.
Yeah. I'm just imagining a set of tiddlywinks for your RPE, and I'm also imagining another coloured set of tiddlywinks to ask players and athletes how engaged were they in the session, and that as a marker of, no, this is boring, this is mundane, or same old, or I haven't learned anything new. That probably is a great piece of feedback, because it might not, just as you sort of alluded to in terms of how you communicate coaching a pop-up tent or a swimmer, it's not just about the recipient of the information. It's reflecting, what does this tell me about my style, my engagement, my creativity or innovation for a training session, and also communicating that we're going to explore this together. So it's not necessarily just a stiff and staged structure.
Yeah, and also your uniqueness. Steve, they want to be coached by you because it's you, because of your uniqueness, because of what you bring to it. And absolutely, it's their association they have with you that strengthens that bond.
Now, you've become a big advocate for play, and so people can look up your TED Talk, for example, and hear you talking about around this topic. But for reference, I'm assuming that it's beyond playing the game. It's adding playfulness or playing per se. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And if so, what's driven that for you?
So I suppose the playfulness is about breaking rules. I don't mean I break rules for the sake of it. It's about breaking up the intensity of a learning. So, we can have an on button where we're very focused, but we also need an off button when we can nourish and restore ourselves. And play is something that is, children are the experts at play. They have real creative thinking, innovation, socialization, freedom, enjoyment, all of those things. Now, why should they be the preserve of children and not of adults? Why should we get older? Should we stop doing it? And, play is multi-layered, and I'll just take two aspects of it. One is that we must always remember that play will give us great ideas. It gives us great opportunities to learn. I've learned so many things through play. I've learned how to connect a group of people through play who've never met each other before. And also it's restorative. If we ask a lot of our athletes, but also there's got to be an off button where they can actually have some downtime. And playing games is a great way of providing those opportunities for us. I mean, I was at a training camp before Christmas, and I took a game with me that I'd bought. I'd not played it before, and I gave it to one of the coaches, and it's pretty intense. We were on it like from the first thing in the morning to last thing at night. And I brought it out at lunchtime and I said, "Oh, Matt, take this home for your children as a present." I hadn't used it. Anyway, I went to the bar at 7 o'clock, and they finished playing that game at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I always know that play will be a great way to connect people. Play will be a great way to engage people. And it's certainly been for me, it's been, and for my students, is that they understand that we can learn a lot through play, playful ideas. And so you look at the science of it, you look at the experience of those who play, and it's there in front of us. I think we mustn't ever lose sight of it.
And I suppose one of the things that's for me are often unsaid. If you say, "Now we're going to have some fun," or "We're going to play a game," there's a little bit of a, right, okay. Now, depending on the different traditions or social settings, there could be some hesitation. There could be some hesitation to suggest that. Just in the sense of, we're a serious bunch of people. We've got to get on, and we've got to be focused. What's your top tip as to how you break that? I don't know whether stigma is the right word. That sort of that tension of maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we should just get on with stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point about, hang on a minute, but I'm here to do this, and you're taking away from that. Well, I think it's one of the things I would say, if I say to people I coach and teach who I know we're going to play a game, they'll know that's my DNA. They'll trust me.
That would be for you. That's your signature.